Avengers: Age of Ultron features the return of Joss Whedon again writing and directing following the first Avengers film, and brings our favourite group of superheroes together again to save the Earth, this time caused by the threat of Ultron, an artificial intelligence created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Age of Ultron is not my favourite Marvel film, and I'd be surprised if it was anyone's, but if it is, good for you. The movie had to wrap up everything that had happened in Phase 2, and set us up for Phase 3 at the same time. So while we were wrapping up some of the Hydra story threads from Winter Soldier, we were also setting up Civil War, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, and ultimately Infinity War, which is a lot for one movie to handle, to say the least. So now rewatching this after the result of all this setup, you can't help but retroactively think maybe we could have cut some of the setup for Ragnarok considering how different the initial tease is here. While at the same time it is fun to see the big main introduction here to Wakanda and Black Panther characters like Ulysses Claw. The only real subtle setup is for Civil War, where you can start to see the seeds planted and a philosophical rift form between Tony and Steve. I do wish that some of these moments though had been left for the post-credits, as this movie is packed. I forget it's almost 2.5 hours because it feels longer. Pacing is a big issue, as for most of the time we're jumping from set piece to set piece, save for the dream sequence moments and the section at Hawkeye's house, which while these scenes are great at giving the audiences a break from all the action, while adding some needed backstory for characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye, they do bring the movie to a halt, especially the Hawkeye stuff. The setup with Ultron as the villain is interesting, with the idea of him not wanting to be a puppet and not seeing the faults in humanity as just something that makes us human. All of these are fun and compelling reasons, but still is nothing close to what we got with Loki in the first Avengers, where we got some family drama between him and Thor. I think that there's a case here to be made for the CG villain, and even though James Spader's performance is remarkable, you just don't have the same connection as you did with Loki, where with Loki, the interaction between him and the Avengers felt more tangible, compared to Ultron being an entirely CG creation. The level of interaction just isn't the same, no matter how many quips they give Ultron. As with other Phase 2 MCU films, we get a much darker insight into our heroes, and what much of the payoff of their Phase 2 journeys lies in this film. Tony has come to terms with his anxiety in Iron Man 3, and is now trying to take the next step to prevent another big attack, while Steve on the other hand is at the forefront of being the leader of the Avengers, and is now coming into his own as the figurehead and trying to balance everyone's egos. A lot of the best drama is again between Tony and Steve, as they try to decide what the best course of action is in taking down Ultron, as well as the general course for the Avengers and how they should be managed. Of course, this is all getting us set up for Civil War, but for the sake of this movie, it's great to see them call into question who the real leader should be, as both of them try to micromanage the team without properly communicating with each other, which if you're in charge of the Avengers is something you should probably have a grasp on. Thor probably gets the least amount of growth out of everyone, particularly coming off Thor: Dark World. There's no mention of Loki outside of his staff being a plot device for the Infinity Stones. Thor is really used to be a conduit to explain the Infinity Stone lore to get us set up for Avengers Infinity War. His entire side quest feels very rudimentary and unnecessary. It would have been great to have the Infinity Stone lore introduced to us more naturally, as the Avengers discover Loki's staff being one of these Infinity Stones, and gradually learn more about what the Infinity Stones are. Hulk and Black Widow get a controversial development in this movie, which I've never really had a big issue with. Here we have a romance formed between them that doesn't feel rushed or out of place to me. We have two characters that can't conceive, who are often considered monsters for different reasons. They've come together and find something despite all their faults, and I think that's great. It gives them purpose and a reason to really work together. Hawkeye becomes much more rounded here as well, by giving him a family and a reason to do what he does. As I said earlier, his portion of the film does slow down the film, but it at least gives the movie its heart as well as some breathing time for the audience. Age of Ultron was shot with your more traditional CinemaScope 2351, so the shots have a lot more depth to them, with more of the frame being used in action sequences compared to the original Avengers, which received complaints due to looking more square and looking like a big budget TV show. This allows Ultron to be a much more cinematic looking film, and Joss Whedon really gets to flex his shooting style by opting for a more darker color scheme, compared to the more saturated, vibrant look that we got in the original Avengers. It's simple yet effective in letting you know that this is going to be a bigger, darker film. This film also introduced the Hulkbuster suit, which a lot of people, including myself, are very eager to see on the big screen for the first time, where we got our big throwdown between the Hulk and Iron Man, which absolutely paid off, and gave us some insight into what contingency plans Iron Man has in case his Avengers pals go rogue, much like Batman does with the Justice League. In fact, all of the action sequences are pretty spectacular. From the opening and closing battles in Sokovia to an exciting car and train chase in South Korea, where it seems like some pages were taken out of Captain America: The Winter Soldier by staging more action in camera rather than relying on CG. Although there is a huge amount of CG in this film. Some of these action sequences can come across quite murky due to their darker aesthetic. All of the main cast have really come into the characters here. They all seem very comfortable with each other, and their chemistry is just off the charts. Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen join the cast as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and while either aren't particularly memorable, they do offer some stakes, with Quicksilver being the unlucky one to not make it out alive, at least showing us that these characters can can die if Marvel wants them to. Although I think most people predicted that he would be the one to die, considering there was a very popular alternate take on Quicksilver that existed in X-Men Days of Future Past. Oh, and thank God they let Elizabeth Olsen keep her natural accent in Civil War. Her Sokovian accent here, oof. One big drawback is the film score, where we have Brian Tyler replacing Alan Silvestri from the first movie, which I think was a mistake. This is pretty generic superhero fanfare with not much to grab onto. Danny Elfman did remix Silvestri's Avengers theme, but it is sparingly used, which feels like a big missed opportunity for big moments like the big rotating shot of all the Avengers fighting together taking on Ultron's army. It was disappointing having the theme really only be used for the credits, which I'm very happy isn't the case for Avengers Infinity War. Avengers Age of Ultron is no one's favourite Marvel film. It had a lot to do on juggling old story threads while setting up new story threads that had to carry over 7 films. It still offers a very entertaining ride with the Avengers, but you are left completely exhausted by the end of it. Avengers Age of Ultron gets a 6.5 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you like this review. There'll be more reviews leading up to the release of Avengers Infinity War, so stay tuned for Ant-Man coming up next week. So be sure to stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye guys.